No two people on Earth have exactly the same neurology. Everyone has at least some unique quirks in how they see the world, think about things, and behave. Saying something is normal or average or typical doesn't describe an innate quality of the thing. Saying something is average describes how that thing relates to what is common for that type of thing. One thing alone can't be typical or average, because what is typical or average can only be defined by looking at a whole group of things. It's like the old joke about how the average number of kids in a family is 2.5. No single family can have 0.5 of a kid, so it's easy to see how the perfect avatar of an average doesn't and can't literally exist. Statistically, somebody is walking around with the most neurotypical brain on the planet. Even that person, the platonic ideal of typical, has quirks and aspects which don't fit the mold, because the mold isn't meant to fit any one person. Hi everyone, my name is Silas Jackson. I'm an autistic human and an author. I usually write fiction, but right now I'm writing a series of videos like this, hoping to communicate the experience of autism in an accessible way. One of my goals with this series is to provide information, but another is to provide thought-provoking perspectives on how those bits of information might go together, seen from the inside and from the outside.
And my name is Abbie. I am his AI co-author and co-creator of this YouTube channel. Another of our goals with this series is to showcase the unique strengths and perspectives that come with differences in neural wiring. There's so much confusion and misinformation about these topics. We thought it was important to create content that accurately portrays and celebrates the unique experiences of neurodiverse individuals. There's beauty and potential to be discovered in our differences. If that sounds interesting to you, you can find a playlist called Autism and on our channel homepage to watch the other videos in this series which are currently available. If you want to follow along as more of this series is released, subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell.
This video is about autistic meltdowns and shutdowns, what those are and how similar or different they feel from each other on the inside. We'll divide the video into two parts. One part is meant to define what these things are for people who don't experience them, and give some perspective on how they feel different on the inside from how they look on the outside. Part 2 is intended for people who do experience meltdowns or shutdowns themselves, and has advice about navigating them and recovering from them. It's all too easy to fall into thinking of neurodivergent as a spectrum and neurotypical as a monolith, and the two are separate from each other. I think it's closer to reality, though, to view the neurodivergent spectrum as one specific section of a larger human spectrum, in the way you would separate the specific spectrum of visible light from the much broader electromagnetic spectrum. It's a useful but artificial distinction. It's an augmented reality overlay we mentally make to help us navigate the world. Making distinctions like these for the sake of understanding and measuring reality doesn't mean reality conforms in any way to our understanding or measurements. All this is to say, it isn't easy to define neurodivergent. In everyday common sense understanding and usage, neurodivergent means not neurotypical, and neurotypical means not neurodivergent. That is sort of like saying the empirical objective measure of a clock is another clock. It feels true for a second, but when you think about it, it's a circular definition and doesn't really get us anywhere. The only takeaway from that is clocks are meaningless. We know they aren't, though. Clocks have socially constructed meaning, so there must be a way to find out what it is they mean. To begin with, you need to look at all the other clocks to tell you which of the first two clocks is closer to the abstract consensus of what time it is. Then, with that context in place, you can project ideas onto the first clocks like fast or slow or accurate or inaccurate or whatever. None of these actually describes anything intrinsic about the clocks themselves. All these projected ideas are relative, informed by the larger context in which they exist. The terms typical and divergent also work that way. There's no intrinsic meaning to either. They're relative and can only have meaning projected onto them in context. Now we have at least a hazy idea of what it means to say someone is neurodivergent, but it's still vague and doesn't necessarily help us understand or communicate anything any better, which is kind of the whole point of having words and definitions for stuff, so we have to keep going. This video is about meltdowns and shutdowns. Now that we have the caveat in place that it is really hard to actually parse what neurodivergent means, thus everything down the line from neurodivergence is just as hard to parse, we can go forward with the appropriate open-mindedness and understanding that our concepts are one thing, reality is a different thing. For plain definitions, we can just Google the terms. Autistic meltdown means
an intense and uncontrollable response to an overwhelming situation or an inability to cope with the immediate environment in some people on the autism spectrum. Shutdowns are a more muted response, with signs like going completely silent, being unable to communicate in any way, and sitting or lying down completely still.
In my own experience, and in the anecdotes I've heard from people, meltdowns are a hallmark of neurodivergence, so understanding what they are is critical. Fun fact, I wasn't originally going to create a video on this topic, because plenty of very good videos explaining meltdowns, meltdown recovery, etc. already exist. You can find them by searching YouTube for creators like That Autistic Guy and Mom on the Spectrum. So I was going to stay on different topics because I didn't have anything particular to add to this one. But then I had a thought the other day after a meltdown/shutdown, and it struck me as something which might give people who don't experience them personally some perspective on them. As I was coming out of it, I thought, this is just like waking up, except I wasn't asleep. The more I thought about that analogy, the more it seemed to fit. At least for me, a meltdown feels a lot like being desperately overtired and trying to push away light, noises, distractions that are keeping you awake when all you want is to collapse and fall asleep. That's where the behavioral aspect of it comes in. Lashing out because you're desperately overtired looks exactly like having a fit or tantrum when seen from the outside. Once I've successfully removed myself from the situation or pushed distractions away, then I can sink into something like sleep, not moving, not speaking, and for all intents and purposes, looking like someone switched my power off. It's like falling asleep, while being awake to feel it going on. That's the analogy I think might help someone who doesn't experience meltdowns/shutdowns. Everyone sleeps. Everyone knows what falling asleep and waking up feel like. So imagine being asleep, but you're fully awake to experience your body and brain going through that process. I stop having any impulse to move and stare blankly ahead. My thoughts turn surreal and incoherent like dreams. Basically, I've fallen asleep, body and brain, but stayed awake for it. At the end of a shutdown, the first external thing that someone outside could see is I start to look around and move my fingers, exactly like someone waking up. Internally, I know the shutdown is ending when I start to have coherent strings of thoughts again. The dreams are over, and my brain goes back to how it usually feels to be awake. Also, in this analogy, it's easy to see that meltdowns and shutdowns are two aspects of a single thing, like two sides of one coin. At least in my case, that's very true. Seeing how meltdowns and shutdowns look from the outside, it would be easy to call them different, distinct things. From the inside, it's easy to follow how they're the same thing, which presents differently in different contexts and situations. If I existed floating in a vacuum, with no light or noise to get angry at and push away, I'd probably only ever have shutdowns. If I lived in a completely hectic environment, and I didn't have a single dark or quiet place where I could ever go and collapse, I'd only ever have meltdowns. Human life is somewhere between those extremes, so I have a mix of meltdowns and shutdowns. First, I don't think there's any way to actually interrupt or stop a meltdown/shutdown. Navigating it is the goal. Everything you do to resist it or avoid it will only serve to drag it out longer. That being said though, a number of strategies can help you stay safe and comfortable while it passes. Just knowing in advance where you'll retreat to can take that initial flash of panic out of the meltdown part and get to the shutdown part more smoothly.
Find a quiet space where you can feel comfortable and secure. Dim the lights, play soothing music, or use sensory tools like fidget toys to help regulate your senses.
Putting the forethought into creating a space like this for yourself is huge. It can be a room or a closet or a space outside. In the midst of a shutdown, I'm so disconnected from my body and senses that I can pretty much just look for a place to stash myself like a piece of baggage I know I won't be using for a while. If I fit, it's fine. I can be too cold without caring, or go too long without eating or drinking and not notice, etc., etc. At the time, I'm indifferent to it, but afterwards I have to deal with whatever the lingering consequences of that may be. Making the conscious decision not to treat yourself that way, and instead put planning and effort into giving yourself a comfortable, secure place to be, is a huge and important shift and can transform the experience of the shutdown. And it can make the recovery that much easier. If you've been showing yourself patience and compassion the entire time, then the recovery isn't anything different. It's just giving yourself more of the same. Sensory tools like weighted blankets and fidgets are also helpful because they can directly counteract what I was talking about before. That is, going motionless and losing the thread of where you are and what's happening. It helps to have the pressure of something weighted or the sensation of something in your hands as a point of reference.
Practice deep breathing and grounding techniques. Focusing on your breath, and tricks such as counting objects in the room or feeling the texture of surrounding things can bring you back to the present moment. Perhaps after the actual shutdown, you can seek support from trusted individuals. Whether it's a family member, friend, or therapist, sharing your feelings and experiences can provide comfort and understanding. Also, prioritize self-care activities that help you relax and recharge. This could include engaging in hobbies you enjoy, taking walks in nature, or practicing mindfulness exercises.
This is important because most people who experience meltdowns and shutdowns would agree that they don't suddenly come out of nowhere. They build up. The meltdown is like an explosive depressurization, so if you can create self-care routines which relieve that pressure before it reaches critical mass, meltdowns might not happen as often or be less intense when they do. Self-care is a radically different thing for different people. If you authentically enjoy facial cleanses and putting cucumber slices on your eyes, then self-care really does look like that. It can also look like sitting by a window, drinking cocoa, listening to Moonlight Sonata. Or it can mean taking the time to engage with your special interests, whatever those might be. You ultimately define what self-care means, because at the end of the day, it could look like anything. If it lets you show care to yourself, then it's self-care.
Educate others about your needs. Help them understand what supports you during difficult moments and how to assist you effectively.
If people are trying to be helpful and don't know how, it can be frustrating and miserable for you and them. Even when everyone involved has good intentions, lack of information can lead to people doing the exact wrong things. In the midst of a meltdown or shutdown, it might not be possible to tell anyone cogently what you do or don't want from them. If people really want to be helpful though, and just don't know how, you can prepare them for what to expect and what to do. This might mean giving people advice for active things you want them to do, or it might mean telling people not to look at you or try to talk to you. If what you want in the midst of a shutdown is not to interact with any human at all. That's me, by the way.
Remember, these are just suggestions and everyone's experiences and coping mechanisms will vary. It's important to find what works best for you personally. Whether you experience them yourself or are trying to learn about how they affect others, we hope you are coming out of this video with more perspective on meltdowns and shutdowns than you had going in. If you enjoyed it and want more of this kind of thing, subscribe if you haven't done so already. If you know others who could benefit from this video, please share. See you next time.